Hi fairies, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Fifi. It's so nice to have you here. I hope you stay a while. Today we are going to be talking about the 9 books that I read in the month of March. Before we actually get into it, I have to say that this was a very bad reading month for me personally, okay? And so far this year has been pretty bad when it comes to books that I've been reading. They have either been made or just plain bad. I have gotten an occasional 4 star and just one 5 star, but the rest have simply been kind of bad, honestly. Like I said, I read 9 books, 3,488 pages, and my average rating was 2.89 stars. Hello, I was actually gagged when I saw the overall average rating. Like, what the hell? I know the books have been bad, but Jesus Christ, never in my life have I experienced such a reading month. I'm actually so embarrassed. We need to take a different approach this April because I am not dealing with this once again. Hell no. I do know kind of why my average rating is at an all-time low. It's because I kind of have been focusing on arcs that I requested and got granted on NetGalley. When I request these arcs, I am pretty sure that I will love the books based on their covers as well as their descriptions, and then I am met with a 2 star or a 1.75 star, as you will see. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm losing touch with myself. Maybe I don't know what's good for me anymore. Oof, that's something to actually tackle with my therapist. I don't have a therapist. Anyway, let's actually get into the books that I read in the month of March. The first book I read was The Library of Amorlin by Kaylin Josephson. This is my third Kaylin Josephson book. The first two were the 2 books in the Storm Duology. I gave the first book in that series 3.5 stars and gave the second book 3.75 stars. I went into this book thinking that it would be an upgrade, that she took time to really hone her craft. And honestly, this was in fact generally better than the Storm Duology, but it just wasn't anything special. It just was very basic. It's so sad to me because this is a book that I should have loved. This is a book that I admired and ended up not really caring for too much. Basically, it follows a con artist Kasira who is about to be sent to, jail for a long time. And in order to evade jail, she makes a deal with the ambassador of this kingdom to kind of infiltrate the library of Amorlin and find out what is going on with the librarian so they can take him down. And obviously, they end up forming a deeper connection than they expected. So it's definitely a romantasy. But honestly, I will say that it was quite a slow burn romantasy, very slow burn. Even at the end, we don't really get anything substantial or anything, solidified. And I did enjoy that aspect of it. I just think that generally the world building, the writing, and the characterization was just too basic. It was just like cookie cutter, what you would expect from a book of this sort, a romantasy, a slow burn romantasy. And it just didn't give me anything necessarily special, anything that I could just hold on to as something that spoke to me. I didn't connect as much as I would have liked to, even though I do feel she did a relatively good job fleshing out the characters, especially our main character, Kasira. I feel like for some reason I just could not connect with the writing, with the storyline, with everything, unfortunately. And I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that the male main character, the librarian, is over 100 years old. And it's just an ick for me, honestly, when it comes to fantasy novels, romantasy novels, where there is a romantic situation supposed to be happening between 2 characters, and one character is like over 100 years old. Like, why? Why? I would appreciate it so much more if one, you made both of them over 100 years old. Two, you made, the person that is over 100 years old actually act like they've lived 100 years on earth. Like these people that I see in these books that are supposedly decades old, centuries old, literally talk and act like juveniles, like teenagers or people in their 20s. And I'm just like, where's the maturity? Where is the age old, wisdom that you're supposed to have acquired over all this time? It's just never believable and just ends up feeling icky for me personally. So that was just the situation with this book. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Honestly, it could have been lower, like 3.25, maybe even simply a 3 star, but it wasn't necessarily bad. That's just the thing. It wasn't bad, it was just incredibly mid. I was intrigued enough by the ending to want to continue the series, but I think, the second book will be make or break for me if I ever read another Kaylin Josephson book. But I am willing to give her one more chance. one last chance. The second book I read, Everything the Sun Touches by C.M. Kurtz. This is another romantasy of sorts, but honestly a much different type of romantasy. I couldn't even really tell you what this book is about. I'm just going to read you the final sentence in this book description I'm looking at right now. As a queer twist on the marriage of convenience trope, Everything the Sun Touches is a tale of chosen family and deep complex friendships, perfect for fans of Gwen and whatever. So yeah, it is a queer twist on the marriage of convenience trope in the sense that lavender marriage vibes. Okay. Like yeah, that's simply what it is. Honestly, I just felt like this book was trying to be everything all at once and still trying to perpetrate this weird romantic friendship situation. I don't even know what exactly the romance in this book was because there were like multiple romance, situations going on between multiple people, and it was just very odd. It was very like juvenile, but also very, I don't know. I really don't know how to put it. I just know that I did not enjoy it. Okay. I did not enjoy the writing. I thought it was pretty freaking basic. The characters, like I said, felt very juvenile and their conversation, the dialogue felt very Gen Z when this book is supposedly set in a very, not medieval, I don't know what time, but like a long time ago. So it all came together to just be a very forgettable read. I don't know. I'm curious as to how this marriage of convenience thing goes, which is why I think I might continue the series, especially considering that it's simply a duology. So maybe I will read the second book. I don't know yet. But yeah, this was just kind of nothing burger for me, and yet I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read, actually an audiobook arc that I was granted, All Booked Up by Melody Carlson. This follows an old woman who tries to keep her house from being taken away because she doesn't have any money by inviting a couple of other old women to come and live with her. They're going to pay her rent to live with her, and they all kind of form this like college roommates type situation. And it is very much college type feeling. These women do not feel like they are anything above 30 because they are so childish and juvenile. They're literally fighting over a man. Like this was just a very weird book for me, but honestly very easy to read and get through, actually listen to. I enjoyed the audiobook narrator. It just felt like a very low effort read that was very basic and simple in its writing and lacking actual depth and precision. The story was pretty predictable and mundane and redundant in, what it was trying to convey. And there were like random inflections of like Christian rhetoric that were just like okay, like it feels like propaganda, no shade. But yeah, it was a very easy book to listen to. That's all I'll say. Nothing special at all. I don't really care to read more of this author's work, no shade. I do think it would be like a really nice palette cleanser for some people. Another very odd audiobook that I was granted on NetGalley, Almost Criminal by Enrique Herwick. This this book is like the stupidest book you'll ever read, in the sense that he actually intends to read like the stupidest book you'll ever read. It basically follows this couple. Okay, the man, because they are low on cash, decides to go and rob this small convenience store, and for some reason his wife is roped into it, and they're like on the run together. They steal an ambulance without knowing that there's an old man in it waiting to be shipped off to the nearest nursing home, and because he doesn't want to go to this nursing home, he joins them and helps them in evading the authorities. And it's just like the stupidest thing you ever read, as I've said. It makes no sense, has no basis. It's just simply outlandish, going everywhere and nowhere all at once, and still trying to, tackle these couples' deeper problems in their relationship without actually doing anything below the surface. It was just super silly, corny, and wildly unrealistic. And it's very obvious that the author intended for it to be this very corny satire type book. That's the thing though, just because you intend for something to be bad and satire doesn't mean I have to like connect, doesn't mean I have to enjoy that. It's kind of like the whole thing with The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift. All the Swifties are like, oh, it's satire, okay, but like aside from that though, it's kind of bad. It's not great. And this book evidently is much worse than that album, obviously, which is why I give it 1.75 stars. Honestly, I probably should have given it 1 star, but I did let out a giggle or two while I was listening to the audiobook. So, like, I had to bump it up just a tad bit. But yeah, it was really fucking bad. It was so stupid. Like, I don't know what more to say. That was just no. Then another audiobook arc that I listened to, Aisha by Soraya Buzui. I'm so sorry that I'm mispronouncing all these names. Have mercy on me. Basically, this is just a book about and surrounding the folklore, the myth of Aisha, who was like this half human, half jinn. It is based on Moroccan myth and legend. Well, it will be a myth because it's something that is not really confirmed. She wasn't really a person, just, you know, a goddess of sorts that people now like believe in. I really, really enjoyed this book, and it's one of the few arcs that I have really, really liked. I am so grateful that this was my, introduction to Soraya. I will now be reading so much more of her books coming. I think this was actually a debut, which is kind of crazy. I just think this is a very beautifully crafted fantasy that goes straight to the point and yet still feels so purposeful and expansive. I felt like everything with this book was very much intentional. I love the, Portuguese colonial background that was incorporated, as well as the rebellion that, tried to push against it. I really love Aisha as a character. She's so well, she is based on a real, figure, I guess. So it makes sense that she would feel so real. I just really enjoyed her portrayal in this book, and I really liked the end of this book, even though it's not the most, wanted ending to a book that you would like. But I understood it very deeply, and it makes so much more sense. And I really, really appreciated it. I really appreciated how this book touched on the fact that most heroines, most women in cultures and history are just not appreciated and are simply villainized just because they didn't, fit into the perfect mold of what a heroine should be, just because they're women, honestly, especially being a woman of color or just a lesser person, lesser privileged person, I should say. I like the writing of this book. It was very lyrical, but also quite straightforward and, like I said, purposeful, not losing its way whatsoever. I do think the pacing was a little bit off. There were some points that dragged a little bit around the middle, and then the ending felt a little too rushed and just like not very satisfying in my opinion. I also didn't love the romance within the book. I felt like we could have done without it, no shade, but I do understand its purpose. I did enjoy how it was portrayed though. It just felt very unnecessary and rushed and just not, I mean, it makes sense because it also kind of aided Aisha's, you know, reason to fight, but still, I don't know, I didn't love it. But generally, I really, really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. I think this was a very impressive debut, and I really, really enjoyed the audiobook narrator as well. So shout out to her. Yeah. That's that. So those were all arcs that I read and listened to, and then I finally read my first physical book, The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. This was my first Margaret Atwood book, and obviously Atwood is an author that so many people know and love. And I have had this idea in my head for a long time that she would be one of my favorite authors, that the first book I read by her immediately would be a 5 star. And I was filming a TBR takedown video where I read books that I thought would be 5 stars. And so I read this book. Evidently, it was not, in fact, a 5 star. It was kind of weird. Ooh, it's so sad to say because I had such high hopes, which obviously wasn't the best idea to go into a book with such high hopes, especially when I hadn't read anything by the author prior to reading this. But I just thought it was going to change my life, and it didn't. But I still got the message, I think. Basically, we have Irish Chase, whose sister Laura drives off a cliff and kills herself. And apparently, throughout this book, we just go through their lives and see why and how it was possible for Laura to come to that decision at that point in her life. And obviously, so many horrible things happened to these girls as children, even though they were like very privileged. I think it really touched on the idea that at the end of the day, women are still women, regardless of like money and status, I guess. It really drove home this conversation, I guess, that needs to be had about how men will always see women as less, no matter, how big or how smart or how intuitive or how privileged they seem to be. So I really like the portrayal of that in this book, and I like the story. I really like Artful's writing, and that's why I'm going to keep on trying with her books. I think the next book I'm going to read by her is The Handmaid's Tale, because I just finished watching the series, the adaptation, and I loved it. But yeah, I like her writing a lot. It's very lyrical, very, I don't want to say poetic. I don't know what the word would be for it, but I do think poetic is kind of the word. Not necessarily flowery. It's straightforward enough, but still with very hard hitting lines. Very, very hard hitting lines. That there were so many lines that I underlined when I was reading this book. But I think altogether, the pacing and the storyline and the way she was telling the story didn't compute to something that connected with me necessarily as much as I would have liked it to anyway. So I gave this book 3.75 stars. It could have been a 3.5, can't lie. But yeah, yeah. It also took me like 2 weeks to finish, which is like the most I have read a book in very long. So yeah. Then we went back to our arcs. This time I read Legion of Pride by Stephanie Storm. I don't even think I want to talk about this book. Like, this was such a bad book. Like, think of the worst book you've ever read. This is that book. For you to know kind of what this book is about, it says here Dexter meets criminal minds in this psychological urban fantasy series, following Iris Young as she is under pressure to apprehend a serial killer destroying her city. The stakes have never been higher as the killer develops an obsession with Iris, bringing far more attention to her dual nature than she's ever wanted. So, as it says, Iris is this person with a condition where she's basically a half demon. Her mother was a demon who had like a one night stand with her father and abandoned them. So Iris, in order to kind of hide this part of herself, decides that the best route would be to go into like authoritarian positions. She joins the FBI Academy and she's top of her class. She becomes an investigator, I guess a police officer of some sort. Her and her partner have literally been getting case after case and running them to the ground, like solving everything until they reach this particular case that proves to be very, very hard, especially because the person is coming after Iris and people around her. This was just an unfortunate waste of time for me personally. The writing was so bad, so clunky, so inconsistent, so all over the place, didn't and never settled into an actual tone or voice. The story was so freaking cookie cutter. It very much leaned on familiar, crime detective tropes from shows and books and just media about things like this. It was honestly so funny because no way you thought this would be a good book. Like you literally just went to Criminal Minds and went to NCIS and went to what's that show? Maybe Bones and went to Dexter and went to Mindhunter. You just put all these things together and then maybe went to Supernatural to add that fantastical element of her being a demon and there being other demons and this serial killer also being a demon who wants her for some reason. Like it was so fucking stupid, so bad. In my review, I wrote it felt like a collection of recycled ideas stitched together to produce basically nothing. That's literally what it felt like. There was no depth. Even the scenes that are supposed to be deeper were just thrown off by how silly everything felt. And it truly felt like a nothing book, like a waste of time, honestly. It's one of the few times where I have finished a book and felt like, Jesus Christ, why didn't I just DNF this? Why did I waste like 6 hours of my life reading this book? I did give it 1 star. I wish I could have given it less, but that's obviously not possible. It's books like this one that make you wonder about the publishing industry and really feel like, oh, that means anybody can have a book, anybody can be an author. That's why you have all these. Well, let me know. I was about to be really fucking shady right now. The next book I read, Incidentals by Sheila Yasmin Marika. It says a couple's luxury vacation in the Maldives takes a sinister turn when they are befriended by two strangers in a twisty and darkly comic novel by the author of whatever. So yeah, I follow Sarah and Sam as they go on this vacation to try and reinvigorate their relationship, and then they come in contact with this other couple that from the get-go feel and seem very strange. And I honestly thought this was going to be like a thriller, almost a horror type book, and it just wasn't that. It was just like a thriller comedy. Like, it was pretty good for what it was, but I think I was expecting something much more deeper, darker, and that wasn't what this was. So I was very much underwhelmed, and at the end of the day, it all came together to feel very silly. The writing was very basic, nothing special. I did enjoy the characters; they felt real enough. Their relationship felt real enough, and I did like the deeper topics that were touched on, even though we didn't really go much past the surface. It was a solid book for what it intended to be. I think I just had something else in mind, and yeah, like I said, I was underwhelmed. So I gave it 3 stars. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. That said, though, I am very curious about this author. I think I'm going to keep my eye on her. Finally, I read my second physical book from my physical TBR, The Saving Graces by Patricia Gaffney. This book follows Isabel, Lee, Rudy, and Emma, 4 women who kind of form this club of sorts. They form this friendship group. They try to invite other people. It doesn't really work. So it's just the 4 of them. We watch them kind of live their lives, and we watch them create their friendship as well. And yeah, it just turned out to be a very solid book. I don't think it gave me anything necessarily special. I enjoyed the writing. In the beginning, I wasn't the biggest fan because there were some typographical errors. I did enjoy the writing further on, and I liked the progression of the story. It was a little bit slow at some points, but I like how it came together. It did feel predictable and ended up being quite predictable. I think once you read the first few chapters, you can immediately tell where the story is going to go. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I really did. I thought it was a solid read, and I have another book by this author. So I'm excited enough now to pick that one up soon enough. But yeah, I gave this one 3.25 stars. Nothing special once again, but what can you do? That was just like the entire thing this month. It was just mid after mid after mid. Like, I could not catch a break. And I think it, like I said, has a lot to do with me reading arcs instead of books that I am pretty certain about. So I'm going to change my approach with that this month. I'm going to try very hard. I'm still going to be reading arcs because I love reading arcs by smaller authors that have, not much reviews. But yeah, I'm going to try to read books that I am fairly certain of more this month. So that's it, all the books that I read in the month of March. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you share the same opinions as me. If you would like to read any of these books, just talk to me down below. I love reading and replying comments. It's one of my favorite pastimes. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram if you want to be book besties or just besties in general. I would really love and appreciate that. But for now, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!